Good evening and welcome to our Minnesota Crossroads Career Network webinar tonight. Really glad you're here and looking forward to a great evening. We have Dave Sparkman, as you are expecting, and we have Tom Jacobson that will be speaking tonight. And my name is 𝘿𝙚𝙩𝙚. I help lead Crossroads Career Network here in Minnesota, and I'm glad to kind of host this tonight. We actually, on the second Thursday evenings of each month, we have Tom Jacobson normally hosting, and we're kind of switching roles here a little bit tonight. So welcome, and look forward to being able to share a bunch with you. We are going to have Tom speak in a minute or two here after I do a brief intro, and then we'll have Dave Sparkman, who you came to see. And then I will be doing an overview of everything that's available for you through Crossroads. And I really encourage you to stick around for that and get signed up and take advantage of all the free resources we have. We have classes, we have a networking group, we have one-on-one coaching and more. And I'll detail that all for you. This webinar, along with all of them that we is going to be posted by tomorrow on our YouTube channel. So you're going to be able to review it at another time if you choose to do that. But part of our hope with Crossroads is that along with helping people succeed in their job search, we also talk about bigger issues of life and point people to the hope and encouragement of Jesus Christ. In that light, we want to take a look to see what the Bible actually says about life. For just about everyone, a job search is way out of our comfort zones. I know it has been for me in the past, and it is for everyone. It takes learning new skills. It takes reaching out to people we don't know and preparing for all kinds of questions. To do it well, it takes courage. And doing that on our own is often beyond us. But when we put ourselves in God's hands, we don't have to do it on our own. The Bible tells us, "Be strong and courageous. Do not fear or be in dread, for it is the Lord your God who goes with you. He will not leave you or forsake you." You know, God never promises that he'll solve all of life's problems for us. However, he does promise that when we put our trust in him, he will walk with us through all of life's challenges, and he'll provide the strength that we don't have on our own to make it through. Having confidence in him, knowing that with him, you can make it through no matter what your circumstances, will give you the courage to do the tough things that you need to do. My hope is that you trust Christ with your life and gain the courage to do the tough things you need to do for your job search and then every other challenge in your life as well. It's only through him that we can really strive to get through this in a very positive way. Let me open us in prayer, and I'll introduce you to Tom, and we'll get on with the evening here. Lord, we're just grateful, as always, that we're able to do these webinars. Even though we're not meeting in person face-to-face right now, we certainly can still share information and gain some encouragement. I pray that you use this evening for your purposes to give people hope and encouragement and practical resources and help in their quest for a new position. And Father, we just trust this evening to you in Jesus' name, amen. And with that, I'm glad to introduce Tom Jacobson. Tom actually leads our Crossroads group in Woodbury on the second Thursday of each month. But he's been through his own job transitions, one not too long ago here, and has learned a few things, but also he'll talk about that, but also why he serves with Crossroads. And I'm just grateful for him. He does a tremendous job for the ministry, and I'm just grateful that we can work together to provide all the resources for people. Tom, thanks for joining us tonight, and I'll turn it over to you.
Well, thank you very much, Harry. It's my pleasure to work with you. Especially, I've learned a great deal, and I always count on you for inspiration and support, and you always provide it, so thank you. Crossroads and me, my career crossroads journey, my transitions. I've had many transitions in my career. The last 15 years, I've gone through 3 transitions. So I tend to be seasoned at it, or can or have done a few of them. So I feel like I don't need any more. I don't want any more. But I know there's probably more transitions in my life. They don't have to be job transitions, but I'd like to share my story with you tonight. Let me start with this quote from an old baseball player from the 50s and 60s named Yogi Berra, who said, if you come to a fork in the road, take it. So when I think about transition, I think about forks in the road. And I haven't always been that quick to take it. And I think I should have heeded the advice of Yogi Berra a very long time ago. But my first transition that I want to talk about happened right in 2008 at the height of when the Great Recession kicked off, which really was started by just the drying up of credit. Credit just went away. And I happened to be in the financial industry at the time, student loan industry, where we would take portfolios of student loans and bundle them together and securitize them. So we needed credit, and we didn't have credit. So because of that lack of credit, we had to shut down the division that we had in Woodbury. All 80 of us were out, and we out on the street with a package. We got a nice severance package at that time, and that kicked off my first transition. What a nice severance package did for me was make me a little too complacent. It made me start slow, and I didn't build up real fast. But I did have an extensive network, especially in the financial industry. So what I was able to do with that network was make inquiries, get people out looking for me, and helping me as a champion, and it did a great deal. And because of that networking, I was able to land a job relatively quickly, even in a recession. After I had gotten started, I didn't get started right away, so it made it harder. But networking was a key to that transition, and it really did help. What I hadn't taken too much consideration was that I really wanted to be in the financial industry, and I wanted to stay fairly, in a comfort zone as related to my career, and that was really important. However, what that meant for me was that it was I wasn't really focused on what culture was there, and you're going to hear later on a little bit about culture from Dave, but from my perspective, the culture wasn't a great fit for me where I went. And after about 3 years, I found myself again looking for another opportunity. This time it was around 2012, when in Minnesota the job market was really slow to come back, and it was very difficult to even network to people, it wasn't difficult to network with people. It was difficult to get opportunities to arise. So it was a lot more work and a lot more effort and a lot more discouraging. And it just got, to be a great deal of pain involved. And at the same time, my family, my mother had contracted cancer, and we were going through, it was inoperable, and we were going through that situation. So that was a real test to my abilities and my faith, and how faith comes into play. And I did have many conversations at that time with God, and trying to figure out the right solutions. Of course, I didn't heed Yogi's advice and really take that fork in the road that I needed to take. But eventually I decided on a career change, and but I didn't veer too far away from I stayed in the financial industry. I became a financial advisor, and that was, I thought was a great fit for me. And I found out again that I had gone down a path that didn't really fit me from a cultural perspective either, or a skill set or other. So after about 4 or 5 years as an advisor, I decided, while I was help leading a 8-week course, that I would reflect on my transition, and that if I was really serving God in the role that I was in, and whether or not it was important to continue down that route. And I chose a different route at that point. I chose to be in transition again and leave and look for something better. And because of that, the tools that I had engaged and the things that I had going on, my networking was much more refined. I had established a lot of tools and things that would help me. And long about that time, the pandemic started or was about to begin. So that added a little stress to the job search, and it delayed my start date by a month or so. But I was able to land a position, and I'm very happy in the position I'm at. And again, didn't leave the financial industry, but I went to what I really enjoyed about being a financial advisor and working with 401k. So from that perspective, transition was good for me. What I want to transition into now is my faith, and how faith has played a big part in my transitions, and how it still does today. I'd like to start my day by running every morning. No matter what the temperature is, I go outside and run. I was running this morning. I run 2 miles plus on days like today. But it is an opportunity for me to have a conversation with God. And those conversations can be animated or they can be subdued. But it is an opportunity to ask questions and to really search for answers and to really listen for the answers to come back. I really do take that time very seriously and really enjoy having those conversations. And I think from my perspective, that's helped me in transition. It helps me in life. It helps me anytime a problem arises in my life. I know that I can use that time to have those conversations. And it really is a time because my mind is clear, and it makes it easy for me to have those conversations. So I really use that time to stay positive and focus on the day. In addition to that, having a daily devotion early in the morning sets the table for the rest of the day and hopefully makes me very positive. So I really do believe in that time frame and using that time frame very wisely. I am a morning person. I like to get up early. I get up at 4 and start the day, and I really want to use that time as effectively as possible. One of the other things is studying the word and making sure, Harry alluded to it in his opening, that there are many answers in in the Bible and through our discoveries through the word. And if we're constantly looking at it and focusing on it, we'll get answers for a lot of the things that life throws at us. So I highly use that opportunity to do that. And I highly recommend that anyone, especially in transition, is starting their day positive and starting their day with, the Lord, and really focusing on the things that makes your job search sing, and really makes you positive and makes you confident to go out and conquer the world of job search and transition. So that's why I think faith plays such a big role. Why do I volunteer? That's another question that I think I learned about in transition. Volunteering has made a big part of my life, not just the volunteering that I have in Crossroads, but volunteering with school districts and foundations that have helped teachers and kids that may not have the resources that are necessary. So volunteering of all sorts are very important. I think they make it gives you great joy and fulfills you in a lot of ways if you can help others and do that. So volunteering is important, but volunteering at Crossroads for me has been an opportunity to give back and to really focus on what is important to me in fulfilling the promise that others have given to me in transition. Many people were there to help me with networking, to help me with the struggles I might have been in, to pray with me, to be there and support me. All those things I have a great debt, and that debt needs to be repaid. And I really do that. I feel like through volunteering, and it makes a big difference in a lot of ways. The other thing I really, we focus, a lot of my time in transition was in different churches throughout the Twin Cities: Easter, Lutheran, Wooddale, Grace Church, Woodbury Lutheran Church, which I've been part of, and volunteered and worked with the career transition group, which became the Crossroads group at Woodbury Lutheran Church. The team we had there was with Pastor Tim Marshall and Anthony Harder and Tom Colosimo and Nancy Heinrich. We just had a great team, and it was a lot of fun to volunteer and go every Thursday, 2 Thursdays a month. Now it's a single Thursday a month. But that's the kind of team really is what energizes me and makes me, and being part of a good team makes me very happy and successful. So to sum up, and then just one more thing I'd like to add: the 8-week course, in being able to work with people through that course, to see their growth, to help them with accountability, and to help people maybe through what they can't see for themselves, and helping them through interview practice and practice and practice and practice of all sorts, has been a big light in my life, and I really enjoy it. And I really enjoy the 8-week course. So if Harry's going to talk about it in his section, and we really do, I get great satisfaction with people in the 8-week course. So that's one of the keys to why I love to volunteer at Crossroads. Sum it all up, transitions happen, and we need to make the most of them. If you come to a fork in a road, you got to take it, and you got to do it quickly. Sometimes, because sometimes we linger, we don't want to fail, we don't want to put ourselves out there, and we only grow through failure. So we might as well just jump head first in and do it. So that's important. My faith has been important to me, and important through transition, important in everyday life, and it makes a big part of my life. And I really that's what I'm very thankful for in my life. And then finally, I really, if you are in transition and you haven't taken an 8-week course with Crossroads, I highly recommend it. We have many great instructors. It's a great tool. It has all the necessary attributes and things in the course that'll make you successful in transition. So if you haven't looked at the 8-week course, and you are in transition and you're struggling, I highly recommend that for you, because it's made a great deal of joy for me, and I really do enjoy volunteering and working with the 8-week course at Crossroads, and in my career transition and my career Crossroads. It has made a big difference in my life, so I appreciate it. And Harry, I probably am a little over, but that's not unusual.
That's all right. Thanks, Tom. That was terrific. I had no idea that you get up at 4 o'clock every morning. There are some crazy people out there.
Yeah.
Actually, Dave, that's going to be joining us here, I think he's that early of a riser as well. I thought I'm early when I get up at 6, but wow, 4 o'clock. Tom, thanks so much. Next, I'm really glad to introduce Dave. Actually, we are sitting here as a result of Dave. Dave started Crossroads at Grace Church in 2005, and I joined him shortly after that. And Dave had built this up to something that just had really begun to thrive, and I'm so grateful for it. Since then, he's also now serves as a volunteer executive director of the National Crossroads organization. And a lot of people aren't aware that that exists. And so definitely check that out, crossroadscareer.org. There's a whole another slew of resources and help available there as well. And we get our workbooks for our classes and other things from that. But Dave is going to be talking about determining a culture fit for your job search. And he knows what he's talking about. Dave served for many years as a chief culture officer at United Health Group, trying to change the culture for 350,000 employees. That's a big ship to turn. And so he has gained a lot. Since then, Dave has left there and has a consulting firm of his own called Spark Your Culture. Get it, Dave Sparkman, Spark Your Culture. I like that. That's creative. But to help other companies look at their cultures and help them thrive as well. And I'm just really grateful to have him here. He's joining us from San Diego tonight, and so a little bit earlier there and a lot warmer, and so he's in a better situation than we are right now, but hopefully warm days are coming here too. Dave, I'll turn it over to you, and you've got the next hour.
All right. Thank you, Harry, and thank you, Tom. Really appreciate your sharing about your experiences. And I did pick up that there was the culture fit was mentioned multiple times, so I might have to test my recommendations with you to see if they line up. And I also really appreciated how you talked about the 8-week course and how in those 8 weeks, you oftentimes help people see things that they can't see for themselves. I've done a lot of small groups with Crossroads over the years, and in every single small group, in every single one-on-one coaching, inevitably, there is something that I see about a person or other members of the small group see about a person that they don't see themselves. So Tom, I think you hit the nail on the head. We highly recommend, no matter where you are in your transition, that you don't do it alone. We all need encouragement. We're built for community, and we're hopeful that at Crossroads Career, we can help you with that. So as we start talking about culture fit in a job search, and what exactly does that mean? I want to take you back a little bit in my own career, and I'm hopeful to weave a little bit of that in here on things that I learned, sometimes the hard way. Sometimes I didn't learn it until years later. I'm able to look back and see something a little bit differently than what I saw before. But I want to take you back to early and late, actually, 2002. I was a partner at a firm called Arthur Andersen, and we had been in the news at Arthur Andersen with another company called Enron. Some of you may recall that time in history, and at Arthur Andersen for years, we had prided ourselves on the culture of the organization. And it, in fact, was one of the things that kept me there for so many years. And then we saw it literally become unraveled right before our eyes. And the firm actually imploded through the Department of Justice and the scandal from Enron, and 80,000 people lost their jobs. My job at the time, I had responsibility for the people strategy on the West region. So basically, if you think of a United States map, Seattle down to New Orleans, everything left and south of that were the people that I had responsibility for. And my job then became either selling or firing all of them as quickly as possible. Not exactly a highlight in my career as far as, wow, I hope I can put this on a resume so I can go do that again. But I then became one of those people that were let go. And I actually had to let go myself because there's no one else left to do that. And I then became unemployed for the first time in my life. I had been unfulfilled in my career before. I had never been unemployed. Very lonely process. I didn't know about Crossroads Career at that time. And ultimately ended up finding a job with United Health Group in Minneapolis. So I moved our family from Los Angeles, California, to the frozen tundra of Minneapolis. And now we've kind of ricocheted back a little bit, but very grateful for the time that I spent at United. And I want to take you to the point in time where I was interviewing with United Health Group, and multiple questions were being asked of me, one of which was, why in the world would you leave Southern California to come to Minnesota? But what are you looking for? What is it that you're trying to find? You have no healthcare experience. You've been in professional services your entire career. What makes you think that you would be a good fit at United Health Group? And I kind of turned the question to them as well. I'm curious what you would think I would do as far as fitting at United Health Group, but I need to understand what United Health Group is about. Because the challenge, one of the primary challenges I had coming in through the search was that I loved what I did at Arthur Andersen. I looked forward to going to work every day. There were plenty of challenges, but I loved the culture that had been built over 80 years of that firm's existence. And one of my biggest fears was not finding a job that I could love again, because I knew a lot of people weren't fortunate enough to have found that. So when I was thinking about culture fit, I didn't really call it that at the time. I thought about just where am I going to find the job that I can love? Ultimately, I believe that's what is a culture fit. And what we are trying to do at Crossroads Career in every facet, whether it's locally through a Minneapolis Twin Cities Crossroads Career or Atlanta or on a national level, we're here to help you hear God calling, maximize your potential, and get the right job. So when I talk about the right job, it's something that fits for you. So let's talk a little bit about what exactly that means. We'll see if we can get this thing to go the next. Have that progress here. All right. Come on, there we go. Sorry about that. Culture fit. You've probably seen those words on the screen before. I'm sorry, but you're just not the right fit. You may have actually heard those words before. And what do they really mean by that? And I've received that question so many times. When an organization is looking for someone, what do they mean when they say they're trying to find the right fit? We've talked about a chemistry within the culture. There's lots of different ways that people can frame it. Ultimately, what they're really trying to say is they're trying to figure out where the round peg fits in the round hole. As you heard from Tom, he landed in a job only to discover that that wasn't the right fit. I would bet if we brought Tom back on and said, well, Tom, did you have misgivings at the time? Did you intentionally go just to test it out? I'm betting he would say, no, I actually thought it was going to be a pretty good fit. Why would I accept a position and go somewhere even though I didn't think it was going to work out? So most of the time, I'd say probably 99% of the time in the experiences I've had in coaching people and going through transitions with them, they actively accept a job because they're thrilled about getting that job offer. And they're going in it with high expectations of contributing to that organization. But yet, what can happen when they're not the right fit? Well, we know what happens. They leave, they're let go. And so what I want to try and cover tonight are some things that you might have been able to do differently. Inevitably, there's questions that could be asked, and there's a process to follow. So we're going to cover all of that this evening. And the key thing to remember is that what I just put on the screen, the cultural fit goes both ways. Many times, people are very reticent to ask questions that they should be asking. And I believe that comes from a position of fear or anxiety, where they are not confident perhaps in one, maybe they don't even know themselves what they're looking for and can't clearly articulate it. But also they're very afraid of what's the other side of the fence going to think about them. Are they going to think they're asking inappropriate questions? Or are they going to come across as, I don't really know what I'm talking about, so I'm just going to let it go, and I'm not going to ask questions that maybe beg to being asked because I'm just afraid they may not give me that offer. And I think you've got to be bold about that. And we're going to come back to that as part of the process and feel confident in asking the questions that need to be asked and the process that needs to be followed. Ultimately, we kind of know it when we see it. We just had our first grandchild born. She's going to be visiting here in about a week, and she's 6 months old. My wife already has the little game that you see in the middle bottom segment. You can see that square little, looks like a square to me, object trying to be fit into the round hole. It won't happen. And so we'll watch little Riley struggle with that a bit. But then when all of a sudden it does fit and they figure out that little game, you may recall when your kids were small, or if you have small children now, they just love making that fit. You may have seen commercials like the one in the upper left-hand corner of the red umbrella amidst all the black umbrellas. And it's just something stands out. Now, in that particular case, the advertisement is about innovation and how they don't want to be part of the crowd. However, when you're trying to find a company that works for you, it isn't that you want to be homogenous with no diversity. That's actually not what we want. We want everyone to come in and contribute their very diverse lenses, because that makes a stronger company. However, if the common core of the culture is not aligned, then the culture will reject each of us as people that don't fit. So we need to be able to fit, at the same time keep that individualism alive and contribute what we were hired to contribute. Now, you could say, why isn't there an app for that? There seems to be an app for anything else. And that's true. And there probably is a culture app out there. I haven't discovered that yet. But if you think of a dating app analogy, I've not used one. My daughter has actually used one and had our family help participate in evaluating photos of young men. That was interesting. But can we really say that the photo that is used is actually true? Could the process be so simple that if you think about a dating analogy, are we going to go through an interview for a job the way we would go through and just do a date? And we're going to think about how different those are. In most job situations, you apply for the job, someone reviews your resume, you get an interview, then a screening interview, then you go to an interview with the hiring manager. Maybe there's then other interviews with other team members, and then you're hired. If you would think about, if you are a married person, think about the process you went through to get married. It was way more thorough than what I just described to get a job. So why would we think we don't need to do the same amount of work for our job, for something where we spend the majority of our time, versus a marriage? Very similar. So when we talk about a cultural fit, one of the things we should do is define it. And I'm just going to put a variety of different definitions on the screen. Values, norms, what we do when no one is looking, the personality of the organization, what people say about you when you leave the room. Boy, there's a lot of truth in that. The character of an organization and just the way we do things around here. Very few organizations I've found are able to actually define their corporate culture in a succinct and articulate way that outlines everything that's put on that screen. Organizations have to kind of choose their definitions, and so do you as an individual. What's important to you? What's going to matter the most? And so these are just a few. If you Google corporate culture or organizational culture or workplace culture, you'll see a lot of different definitions. And yet I have found, and the statistics would belie this, that most people don't take the time to define it, let alone figure out if they're going to then go through a diagnostic to see if they match up. Fast Company just had a headline that 69 million people in America quit their jobs last year, okay? And we know we're in the Great Resignation time period. Gallup did a poll where they said that of those people that quit, 42% of the people that quit because of either their bosses or the organizational culture. So maybe that's why you're here. Maybe you didn't fit at your last organization. Well, you're not alone. There's a lot of other people that have been in organizations where they don't fit. Part of this is the definition. So I'd encourage you to jot some notes down as to which ones may fit you the best, and then you can start to discern how you ask about the other ones. Ultimately, the equation is a very simple one. You as the candidate want to get into a place where you can do your best. The organization has a need that they're trying to solve. And so how do they match up what you do best to what the organization needs most? As with many things in life, it's simple. It's not easy. It takes a lot of discernment, a lot of work from a lot of people to make that happen. And yet, what I've observed in literally thousands of interviews that I've done as the interviewer. And I did probably about 100 as I interviewed for jobs myself, is we really don't take the time to thoroughly figure out what the match should be. We wish it was as simple as the object that you see on the screen. Oh, there's just one last piece to the puzzle. This has to be where it fits. But we really haven't done the work of putting the puzzle together in the first place. If you think about when the last time was you put together a puzzle, how did you do it? What's the process you used? Well, you went for if you're like me, you go for the easy ones first. You start with the frame. You try to get the whole thing framed out, and then you work from the outside in. Eventually, you hopefully end up with what you see on the picture here. However, and then you take advantage of what opportunities present themselves along the way. If I happen to see that something fits and it all works, of course, I leave my strategy and go there. And the same thing would be true with the job search. You have to take advantage of what's given to you. But if you know what the overall game is that you're trying to play, you'll play it better. Because when I put together a puzzle, I always have the top of the puzzle box right there so I can see what it is I'm supposed to be aiming at. So let's get into what some of those things are that you may be aiming at. Most people think it's knowing yourself. But when I started to write down a few of the things that you could or should know about yourself, there's 14 items there. Just as an example, I didn't know my life purpose, or I should reframe that. I wasn't able to articulate my life purpose until I was 41 years old. And that only happened because I was the sponsor of our executive learning development plan, and I was the sponsor of it. And the first day had gone by as usual. As the sponsor, I was in the back and I could drift in and out and do other work. I didn't have to participate in all of the things the class was going through. But I was there at the end of the day as the instructor closed up the day. And this was a guest instructor. We didn't know each other that well. And he said, well, tomorrow, when you all come in, based on what we've covered so far today, I want you to share your life purpose. And Dave Sparkman, as the sponsor of this session, is going to go first. Well, I just about panicked. Number one, I hadn't been there the whole day, so I didn't know everything that had been covered. Number two, I didn't have a life purpose to share. So of course, that night I'm wrestling with, why am I here? What am I here to do? How does this play out? Well, the next morning I managed to get my life purpose out, and I've refined it a number of times since then. My life purpose is to glorify Christ by helping people and organizations achieve their aspirations and his purpose. That's my life purpose. That life purpose helps guide me on a lot of things that I do. It's why I'm involved in Crossroads. At Crossroads Career, I can help in a variety of ways, whether it's giving a presentation like this or having one-on-ones or facilitating a small group. It lines up with my life purpose perfectly. Doing culture work, again, helping people and organizations achieve their aspirations, all grounded with the truth from Scripture, is what I use to try to help other people. So that's just one aspect, life purpose, and that took about 42 refinements to be able to articulate it the way that it currently stands. If you start thinking about all of your abilities, what are your instincts, which are different than your strengths, which are different than your motivations? There's assessment tools for all of those things. How well do you really know yourself? And what I have found in small group after small group as we go through steps 3 and 4 is that most of us don't know ourselves that well. We think we do. We think, yep, we've got this, but to be able to articulate it clearly and then use that as a guiding tool for ourselves as we make decisions, that's where oftentimes we fall woefully short. Now, tonight we're not going to spend time going through each of these and coaching you as to how to do that. The small groups at Crossroads Career are really where that is the bread and butter of the small group, because you have the facilitator and the other group members that can help you, again, see those things that Tom mentioned that maybe you don't see yourself quite as clearly. So I encourage you to go after these 14 things. They're very useful, and to start to match that up to what the organization is like is going to be very helpful as you determine cultural fit. So what we are going to spend our time on this evening is, what about the organization? How can you get to know more about it to see if you're going to like it? Or, let's not use the word like, it's about a fit. And it's also about your contribution. Ultimately, that's what's going to give you, I would contend, the most satisfaction and the most fulfillment. Culture is very, very important. Peter Drucker said years ago that culture eats strategy for lunch. What's that mean? Well, that means that no matter how robust the business strategy or model is, no matter what the structure of the organization is, and there's a lot of different structures that could be used, if your culture isn't grounded upon some key principles that everyone knows and everyone buys into, you will not accomplish the strategy in the maximum way that it could be accomplished. And I, again, contend that the same thing could be true for job candidates. If you're not clear about who you are, you won't be able to find out if you're that round peg for the round hole or the round peg for the square hole, right? How can you fit? Now, when we think about the organization and asking the right questions to see if you'll be the right fit, there are some challenges with that. And I've listed a few of those here on the screen. The number one challenge I've seen, and this was true at United Health Group, and it's true in some of the companies that I've spoken to subsequent to that, is they don't know themselves very well. Or if they define it, they don't define it very well. They just say, well, our culture here is like this. Our culture, they refer to it broadly, but when you say, tell me exactly what your culture is, most organizations or people within the organizations can't do that. We also have to remember that, hey, every hiring manager, last I checked, is a human being. And those human beings have blind spots. And so even if the corporate culture is well-defined, you have a bunch of very fallible people trying to execute the culture. So you may have a department over in building A where the culture is going great. You may have the manager that has remote workers in all sorts of buildings all over the United States or even the world. And even then the culture could be great. And if you land with job manager C, all of a sudden it doesn't fit because every one of them execute the culture if it's defined in a different way. Also remember that most hiring managers are actually not that good at interviewing. So while you may want to rely on their abilities to screen you, remember where they're coming from. They're trying to figure out how can they get a person in the door as quickly as possible that can do the job. And many of them might discount the effect that culture has on that individual's ability to do the job. So you're going to want to, again, we're going to get into this process and questions. You need to take ownership of this because you can't rely on the organization or the interviewers to figure this out for you. Opposites may attract. Organization have many angles. Being a good fit is just not only the hiring manager. Because guess what? You're not only working with the hiring manager. You're working generally with a team of people. There are other departments. There are, we run into this wonderful thing within large organizations called the matrix. And even when you think you know who has the ability to make decisions, that person doesn't have the ability. So there's a lot of challenges, and that's why you should not rely on the organization just to tell you what the culture is, and then you can just see if you agree with it or not. There's some due diligence you should be doing on yourself. So what I want to share with you are 8 practical steps. I'm sure there's more, but here are 8 that I've found useful in helping people start to discern and decipher whether they may be a good fit for that organization. Number 1, remember what Tom said about taking that early 4 a.m. run. And Tom, I will not be joining you for the 4 a.m. run, but I do want to join you to talk with the Lord every morning. And there's a reason I phrase this talk with the Lord. And I love the way Tom did it as well. It's not talk to the Lord. It's not just sit and listen to the Lord. It's an exchange. I heard someone say one time, well, how can I know what God's will is? How will I know when God is speaking to me? Well, number one, he gave us his word with lots of words in it where he has spoken to us. So are we spending time with him in his word, looking to see what truths he has to offer? And number two, are we then interacting with him in prayer, asking him questions? And as Tom mentioned again, sometimes pretty robust conversations, other times maybe it's merely quiet and reflective. But he does have a plan for you. We're told in these two scripture references that I have on the screen, he wants his best for us. Do we follow closely, or do we go on our own way? Proverbs 3, 5, and 6, another very common verse: lean not unto our own understanding. In all our ways acknowledge him. He'll direct our paths. Proverbs 16:9, a man's heart plans his way, but the Lord directs his steps. Are we really open to considering what God is trying to tell us? Now, some of you may quickly go to, well, there's really nothing in the Bible that tells me which job to take. You're absolutely right. But there's lots of guidance that can lead you to discern which job to take, right? And culture, a lot of that has to do with the culture fit, because we're told throughout Scripture to do good works. In fact, the Crossroads career main verse is Ephesians 2:10, where we're told to do the good works that God prepared beforehand that we should do. Well, if we're trying to do good works and you find out that your organization that you're interviewing with isn't doing what you would consider to be good works, guess what? You now no longer have a good cultural fit. So I encourage you to talk with God about this. Give him time to answer. If you're reading his word, you'll understand his vocabulary a lot more than if you're not. Number two, compare core values. This goes again, first of all, assuming that you know your own core values. And I don't mean that you're just able to toss out 3 to 5 little words that like innovation and creative and integrity, commonly used words. I'm talking about what are those key words or phrases for you, and what do they mean to you? And then you go to the organization and ask the same question. What are they and what do they mean? And then you start putting on your investigative hat and saying, is what is really stated really what is practiced? Are they actually what's happening, or is this just that aspiration, which could, someday we'll get there type of thing? And when you start to compare, this is going back to the definitions. What integrity means to one person isn't what integrity means to another. If that's, let's say that's a core value on both fronts, both you and the organization. Well, finding out what it means and how it's implemented are oftentimes two very, very different things. Of course, when we say something, but we don't do it, what do we refer to that as? Whoop, there goes that hypocrisy word again. And most people I've met don't actually like being around hypocrites. But yet, if you land in a company which says it practices their core values, and then you don't see their behaviors lining up with that, it's what the book of James tells us, that you can't be just a hearer of the word and not a doer only, or your faith is dead. So while your company may not have a, quote, faith, I would contend that beliefs and actions are what represent that faith. So I encourage you to start to figure out, can you tell that they practice what they preach? And some of that you can find out through what I have on the screen and checking out what other people say. You can go on the net and find out all sorts of things about all sorts of companies, about all sorts of people. Just remember, take it all with a grain of salt. None of these 8 steps or clues that I'm giving is the answer unto itself. And just like people don't say the truth to your face, they don't say the truth online. There are things on Glassdoor and the Vault that are not true about a company. But if you go through the 8 clues that I'm suggesting you look for, you're going to start to see a pattern line up. And you can trust the pattern. You're going to trust the pattern because your gut will tell you whether this makes sense or not. So along with checking out what people are saying, it's of course going back to the network. And you'll hear Crossroads Career talk about this all the time. Network, network, network. It's not just to find the person that has the job in their hip pocket. In fact, it's everything but that. It's to find out information that can help you make a good decision on where to go work. Yes, one of the people you network with might actually know someone who has the exact job ready to go for you. But most of the time, they're just wanting to try to help you in some way understand what they do, why they do it, and where they do it. Well, you need to go in prepared. One of the books that I consider to be the gospel of networking is called The 20-Minute Networking Meeting by Nathan Perez and Marcia Ballinger. Harry's had them speak at Grace Church multiple times as part of Crossroads. If you have not gotten that book yet, get on Amazon while I'm speaking, get that book delivered to you tomorrow. It will tell you everything you need to do in a 20-minute session with someone to extract great information and be seen as helpful to the person with whom you're networking. Networking is not just about being a pest. It isn't nagging people. It's not exploiting or manipulating people. It's just two people forming a relationship, trying to help each other out. So if you look at it through that lens and know that by networking, the way we look at networking at Crossroads is actually expressing as a job candidate love toward another person in a compassionate way. So if you care for that person, make good use of their time. Ask good questions. Have a purpose for what you're trying to pursue from that conversation, and the rewards will come back to you. Clue number 5, apply a leadership lens. So maybe you're not a team leader. Maybe you are not a department leader. Maybe you're not a division leader. Maybe you're not a CEO. Fine, most people are not in those categories. But if you assume for a second the position of the leader and say, what is that leader allowing? Larry Sin is the CEO of a company called 𝘿𝙚𝙩𝙚, and they were the company that we used to help get us started from a consulting perspective on our culture journey at United Health Group. And he has this quote, what you permit is what you promote. And also what you promote is what you permit. Through those networking conversations, if you ask about leadership and what are the leaders like at fill in the blank company, you're going to get a wide variety of answers. And again, you're going to start to see a pattern develop. There's a company in the news right now, Better.com, that I had never heard of before until it hit the news that they're laying off thousands and thousands of people very abruptly. Well, okay. I still don't know that much about the company, but if somehow Better.com landed on my list of an organization that I was going to consider, I would say, well, let's look at how that company responded to whatever challenge it is that they're having to respond to that is, I'm assuming, forcing them to lay off as many people as they're having to lay off so quickly. Almost every company has ended up in the news. Many leaders are in the news. Again, going back to what you can find online, take a look and see what leadership decisions have been made that come with the core values that you're trying to line up to. Number 6, you want to look very broadly. If I asked you what the culture was of what you know about Chick-fil-A versus what you know about Burger King, if I talked to every participant on this webinar, every one of you would have different answers, but you'd have a lot of similarities because we all have an impression of Chick-fil-A versus Burger King. Just like a Ritz-Carlton versus Comfort Inn, Ford versus Tesla, go through any comparison you would want of a company and you're going to get a different answer. I always liken it to your eye doctor appointment where they're putting those lenses in front of you. And of course, it drives me crazy. They're always breathing really heavily in your ear. Lens 1, or lens 2, A or B? You know, their voice goes into this. Anyway, I'll spare you the impression. But you're going to have a reaction to that with what you see. So put on that lens of culture and start looking at those companies and comparing the company you're interviewing with other companies in the same space. So for example, if I was interviewing back at United Health Group, I'd say, United Health Group or Bright Health, United Health Group or 𝘿𝙚𝙩𝙚, United Health Group or Anthem. I mean, you can just go and you're going to start to have those impressions again to form a pattern that will give you a clue as to what might be the culture at that organization. Number 7, and this is one that unfortunately most people don't do. We know that the hiring organization is going to do a reference check on you. Why aren't you, as the candidate, doing a reference check on them? Well, what does that mean? What does that look like? Well, that means after you get an offer, you simply say, hey, I'm wondering if there would be 1 or 2 other people that I could speak to on the team in another department, because I want to make a good decision, right? What would happen, or what's your reaction if the organization would say, no, absolutely not. We don't want you talking to anyone else in the organization before you make that decision. Okay, that tells you something. How they respond to your questions, trying to do your due diligence, matters. Now, most companies have not probably received that question before, so we need to give them a little grace if they respond out of sorts. But how can you start to find reference checks, particularly on the leader with whom you're going to be working, your hiring manager? Think about that dating analogy. How well do you really know him or her? And yet you're signing up to go spend 20, 30, 40, 50 hours a week working for that individual with whatever their temperament is, with whatever their personality is, with whatever their strengths are. Think of that other list where I had 14 things about how well you know yourself. Now apply that to your boss. Would you make the same decision if you were able to extract a few things about the person who is to be your boss? Oh, I can't wait to work for this guy. He's a micromanager. I found out he looks over my shoulder all the time. This is going to be great. I'm going to love working for our micromanager. Or, he instills fear into everyone that he supervises. I can't wait to work for a guy like that. 2, okay, a little extreme examples, I'll give you that. But think about what you've said to others as you've left prior organizations, about your supervisors or about that organization. You're speaking about the culture of that organization. The trick is, how do you find those things out before you accept the offer? So to do a reference check, to try to flush out those extremes, it's a lot better than if you didn't. Last one, almost done, and we're going to open it up for questions. Direct questions. Be direct. Just like you receive a behavioral interview question, tell me about a time when you were especially proud of something that you accomplished. I'd like to know what it was, when it was, where it was, and with whom it was. I mean, that's classic behavioral question. Well, why not say the same thing back to the interviewer? Tell me about a time when your corporate culture shaped one of your decisions. What do I mean by that? What kind of answer should they be able to give to pass, in my view, the sniff test? I am not talking about in the bullet point 1, I can tell you what my 5 values are. I'm also not talking about, well, we do icebreakers around the 5 values. I'm talking about where they really made a business decision based on the 5 values. So at United Health Group, one of the gentlemen, he's no longer there. He's the CEO of another healthcare company in New York. His name is Jeff 𝘿𝙁𝙁. And at the time, he was head of our employer and individual space within United. And this was at the time, probably around 2012, 13, Obamacare had come into the world, and the exchanges were taking place within healthcare. United Health Group had stayed out of the exchanges the first year or two, and then we jumped in with both feet because we thought we had a good lay of the land and could navigate it. We were wrong. We lost a lot of money, and so we decided to exit that market of the exchanges. At that point in time, we were involved with about 20 of the 50 states in the state exchanges. And in the old world, before we had worked on our culture, the way we did that, how we did it, would have been very different than what Jeff Alter shared with me as I talked to him those years ago about how the process they used to exit the exchanges. He said, Dave, in the old world, old culture, a governor or the secretary of Health and Human Services for that state may not have even received a phone call from us. They would have just found out that one day that we weren't going to further support the exchange. What we're doing now, because we want to live with integrity, which we defined as honoring the commitments that we had made, we want to have compassion, walking in the shoes of the people we work with and those we serve. We value the relationships because we've tried to build trust through collaboration with those people. And we value the innovation that we did with those states in partnership with those states to try to go after the exchanges. And of course, last, the fifth value of our performance value, even though we feel like we performed, we're not performing for our shareholders. It's a drain on our bottom line. We're going to exit those markets. And so we called, set up meetings in person, flew all over the country. Every state CEO was in person with those people, telling them the decision that we had made as an organization, listening to the response, working with them, how they could go through a smooth transition. Now there is an answer about how the 5 values influenced how, not only what the decision was, but how the decision was implemented. Another question would be how people describe the corporate culture. Again, just to throw out the 5 values or 3 values or whatever it is, to me would not be enough. I need to understand, how do those show up? How do those show up in a team meeting? How do those show up when decisions are made? How do those show up when you assimilate new people into the organization? And how does that show up when you let people go? Those are all very valid questions. And again, I would submit to you that if they don't handle responding to those questions well, what does that tell you? Then what's it going to be like when you're working for those people? You're not even working there yet. And if the response isn't one to try to engage and really pass along useful information, then you can only imagine what it's going to be like working for those people. I like this last question a lot. What does a bad fit look like within your organization? Trying to flush out, what does it look like to be successful? We'll go the opposite, because most of the time, people are ready for that question. You know, as a candidate, I remember asking the question, well, after 90 days, what does success look like for you? And I thought I was really smart in asking that question. I wish I would have had this question. What does a bad fit look like? Because many times, hiring managers, leaders have not really thought through that. They just know it when they see it. They haven't really defined it or articulated it. So you can help flush that out. So as we wrap up, we've talked about 8 different practical steps for you to figure out whether you're the square peg in the round hole or not. Leave you with this. This is your job. Nobody else is going to care about it as much as you. And it's absolutely worth the work. If you've experienced working in a place where you were not a cultural fit, for whatever reason, it's painful. It's hurtful. It's very, very stressful. So I'd encourage you, try some of these clues out. I'm hoping it works for you. And with that, I will stop sharing and I'll open it up for Harry, and we will moderate some questions that you may have off of what I said, or maybe you have an experience to share that might be useful for some of the participants. So Harry, I'll bring it over to you for any questions that may have come up.
Yeah, thanks, Dave. Nothing there yet. We did have someone ask about the book. I put it into the chat, the 20-minute networking meeting by Nathan Perez and Marsha Bollinger, and I put a link in the chat if you want to click on that. But definitely recommend picking that up if you are looking for some help with networking. As we wait for, if you have any questions or comments, be sure to type them into the chat box and we can address them directly. But as we wait for that, you and I, Dave, have talked about this many times, but the asking questions about the culture and what it's like to work for a particular hiring manager and what you experience by working in that organization makes you a better candidate. It gives you more information to make a better decision, but you set yourself apart from other people they're talking to as well. And there's nothing but good that comes from that. And if they're not reacting good to your questions, then as you said, that raises a question for you of whether this is the right place or not.
Right.
I think many people in the interview process are afraid to ask questions thinking that it's going to be inappropriate or not received well, but I think it actually sets you apart in a positive way.
I would agree, completely agree. Well, Harry, if questions come up, I'm going to be on as you wrap. We can certainly go back to you, and if anything comes up, I'll be here if a question does arise.
Here we have one. How do you get to an interview with enough time where you can actually execute on all this? In other words, I'm assuming, you generally have 45 minutes or an hour with somebody to get all of this taken care of and get their questions answered as well, right?
It's a great question. And the answer is most of the time you won't. That's why the networking is so important and the behind the scenes is important. One, so it'll guide you into what questions to ask, right? Because there's a lot of questions you could ask. And generally, in most interviews, as the candidate, you only have time for maybe one or two questions. I get that. However, assuming you make it to the offer stage and you receive an offer, now you're back in the driver's seat. And Harry and I both advise people never to just accept an offer on the spot. Politely, graciously, enthusiastically thank them for the offer. Ask them when they need a decision. Tell them you need to talk about it with your significant other, your spouse, friends, counselors, whatever you need to do, and get yourself a little bit of time. Then you can step back and say, okay, what do I not know about that organization? What questions should I ask? And I would contend that there's really three areas or buckets of those questions. One bucket is compensation and benefits, because you use this as an opportunity to get some leverage and there's negotiation there. Two is culture. And three is just getting to know the people that you're going to work with and or the business that you're in more fully. There were times when I would ask a candidate, "Oh, do you have any questions?" And they would say, "Well, no, I think I'm good. I don't have any questions." I would immediately take those people out of the running. I had worked at United Health Group for 15 years. I still had questions about United Health Group. I mean, how could you not have questions about an organization that large? But once again, when you receive the offer, get yourself some time, regroup, and come back at the hiring manager. As Harry said, that will distinguish you from other people.
We have another question. What recommendations do you have for 60-year-old and plus job seekers as they're trying to find the right culture fit as they're facing the age dilemma?
Good question. We know that there is age discrimination out there. It's almost impossible to prove, but we know that it's out there. The good news, and I'm almost 60 myself, so the good news is we got a lot of miles under our belt, a lot of experience, that we should be able to sniff out some things that other people shouldn't, based on our experience. However, I've also been guilty of not taking advantage of my experience, and I still make some major faux pas. So you want to go through that process, the same process I outlined. You may have a different vantage point based on what you've experienced in either being laid off or maybe you've been at the same company for a long time. And as you're looking at this new environment that you're considering, take a look around. I mean, it's much harder now because so many people are remote. You can't just take a walk and around the company or get through security and try. But again, the networking side will give you a flavor for, and it may be just a blunt question to a networking candidate where you say, tell me about what it's like to be age 60 in this company. And if you get someone looking at their shoes and shaking their head, that's going to tell you something. More than one company in the past has gone through and without being illegal, they've been very diplomatic in ushering people 55 and over out the door in search of younger talent. However, guess the stage of life that we're in right now, or the stage that our businesses are in. It's called the Great Resignation. With over 30 years in HR, I had talked about this for years, that in preparation, companies need to be ready for the Great Resignation, or when talent is hard to find. Well, guess what? We are here. And companies, I've seen article after article, are trying to talk people out of retirement to come into their companies because they desperately need the help. So I actually think we're in a different position as candidates now, and you can be in the driver's seat, assuming that you have the energy level that doesn't belie your age. If I'm on this presentation and I don't have energy, hopefully you think I have energy, but if I just said, okay, well, we're now going to talk about culture, and it was just a lecture series, I think the inner energy a person conveys is much more important than the age that we all have chronologically. So I'd encourage you to take advantage of the season that we're in our economy, with the Great Resignation and the need for talent that organizations have.
I completely agree. The energy and desire to still learn and grow is so critical for overcoming that objection, and that makes a huge difference. But right now in the market, age is less of a handicap than I think it's been in as long as I can remember, and there is the demand out there. Another question here. Any suggestions you have for getting people to respond on today's networking requests? It seems getting overused, and people are less willing to engage in helping your transition, or say they will drop off. I've read Nathan's book and won his awards. Yeah, I mean, one thing I definitely want you to comment on this, but one thing that I keep stressing to people is that you have to think of networking like baseball. If you're batting 300, you're doing really well. And not everybody you reach out to is going to connect or be willing to talk. And not everybody you talk to is going to have anything for you. But if you're connecting, 30% of the time, 40% of the time, you're doing really well. And you just have to keep that in mind, that the no's just lead you to the next yes.
And Harry, I use a phrase that I think I got from you years ago. You've got to be politely persistent.
Yeah.
And you just have to keep after it. People are always busy. There are emails I know that I've received that then they get buried under other emails. And as diligent as I like to think that I am, I miss things. And that same thing goes with a voicemail or a text. So just give it another try. But probably the biggest thing that will get you the networking opportunity is a warm introduction from another person with whom that person knows. So if you're just networking via LinkedIn or I would call it a cold call, that can be difficult. But if you said, hey, Jerry really suggested that I talk with you. He said you could have some very valuable help for me. And I would be so appreciative if you could find a few minutes to talk with me. I commit that I will make good use of your time. I have some very specific questions for you. All the things that the 20-minute networking guide talks about. They're going to do it because they like Jerry, and because you truly have that opportunity of a warm lead. And that's why in networking, one of the things you do is, are there a couple other people you might suggest that I could speak to? And you just keep following that trail, being politely persistent, and I think you'll get some good results from that.
Absolutely. You referred to the Great Resignation which certainly has been going on. And a lot of that is because of culture in organizations. People feel like where they're at is just not a good fit for them, whether it's flexibility, whether it's the relationships they have in the organization, or any number of other things. But it becomes so important. And I think the good news is companies are more aware of this than they've ever been, and trying to accommodate as much as they can. And I think are much more just self-aware of what their culture is like and what they want it to become, and working towards it.
They're having to wake up, Harry. I had a meeting yesterday with a former colleague of mine at United Health Group. He was sharing a story of his daughter who works at a company, and she was very displeased with the culture. She found another job. She resigned. The company that she was leaving responded with almost double her salary. Wow. to try to retain her. She still left.
Yeah.
Because she said, nope, the culture is not a fit. Money. I know it's not the fit. So companies are starting to get the signal, right, that they can't just throw money at the problem. They really have to do the work around culture, which is ideally what I think most employees would want. Is, hey, I want to look forward to going to work every day. So agree with you. It's not just the money, and just I'll throw it over to you and get back off the video, Harry. But appreciate you having me here today, and hope people found it useful.
Yeah, I hope so too. A lot of great information. Thanks so much, Dave. And I think just very relevant for the job market today. And so hopefully that was helpful for you. I want to jump in here and talk about the other things that are available to you through Crossroads, and certainly hope that you take advantage of them. Let me share my screen here, and hope you see that. But you, if you haven't received one of these yet, you will be receiving this in the mail in the next several days here. 𝘿𝙚𝙩𝙚𝙦, who actually spoke on one of our webinars a few weeks ago, and you can find that on our YouTube channel. I'll explain that in a minute. But it's a tremendous daily devotional for people that are unemployed. He goes right to the heart of so many of the topics that affect people that are going through this process. And if you're not finding the topic right off, there's an excellent index in the back to help you find questions you have, or things that would help you spiritually and emotionally, and with moral support along the way. It's an excellent resource, and we're providing that for free to you, and that'll be coming if you haven't received one already. It's, as you registered for this webinar tonight, you put in your address, and we'll be sending it there as soon as possible. I'm sure you already have been if you registered for this webinar, but if you haven't checked out the rest of the website, be sure to explore around our website, mncrossroads.com. And we have all the information about the different events we have available. We have a job board where companies can post positions. They know what we do. They specifically target us with their job requests, and we ask that they put their contact information in there. So if you have questions or want somebody to reach out to follow up, you have that. So we have a variety of jobs on there. It's not as full as Indeed.com, but it is definitely worthwhile. But we have all the additional information about other resources we have available as well. I'm just noticing somebody put in a question of Dave, will Dave be writing a book? And he is in the process of doing that. I don't know when it will be available, but keep your eyes open. When we meet in person, and I hope within the next few months here, we're going to be able to do that again. We actually meet at 3 different locations around the Twin Cities area, in Eden Prairie, Woodbury, and Arden Hills, on the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd Thursdays of the month, respectively. And as we return to in person, be sure to find the one that's closest to you and attend there. We will also continue to simulcast those events so that you can watch online. But man, it's so much better in person when you can actually see people and shake hands and talk to others, in addition to just listening to the presentations. So take advantage of that as it returns. if you want to put it in the comments, are you looking forward to getting back in person? I want to do this sooner rather than later, but we tried it last fall and only had a few people show up and wasn't the time yet. So I'm hoping it is soon. And keep your eyes open on the website for details as that happens. On a weekly basis, there's a number of ways you can get plugged in. Every Thursday morning at 9 o'clock, we have our Networking with Grace group that meets. And it's online through a Zoom meeting right now as well. But you get a chance to actually interact with the others that are participating and be able to get contacts and questions answered and be able to get some ideas and resources for your job search. It's very dynamic. We have Wes Tang and Wes Roper, we call them Wes 1 and Wes 2, that lead that jointly for us, and they make sure that everybody walks out of there with something each week. So take advantage of that online. The details and registration is on our website as well. Anytime you want, and as often as you want, you can sign up on our website for one-on-one coaching. You can fill out a form and somebody will follow up with you. We have a team of people that are coaches that will reach out to set up a time for either a Zoom meeting or a phone call, whatever you prefer. And you can talk about any questions you have regarding your job search, whether it's preparing for an interview, somebody to look over your resume with you, somebody to maybe do mock interview practice with you, or just to talk through your circumstances and get some advice and help. Take advantage of that. Details again are on our website. This process of going through a job search, as we've kind of alluded to earlier, and as you know by now, is an emotional roller coaster. And smoothing that out can help tremendously. But we really believe in the power of prayer. And we have a team of people that love to pray for you. We have a prayer request page on our website, and somebody will let you know that they're praying for you specifically. And beyond that, we also have what we call soul care for the job search. Is if you feel like you're really kind of in a rut and need some moral support or spiritual support along the way, we have a team of people that will meet with you one-on-one on a weekly basis, or whatever schedule works out best for the two of you, and can walk through some of the challenges that you feel like you're facing from that perspective. So again, details on the website, take advantage of it. It's a great help to get through the roller coaster part of this process. The most in-depth and ongoing help you can get for your job search is our classes. We have an 8-week small group class that we're doing by Zoom meetings right now as well. And it covers every aspect of a successful job search, starting with attitude and getting in the right frame of mind and doing some assessments, talking a lot about networking and targeting companies. We talk about resumes and what is important on those, and interview skills and dealing with different interview situations, and negotiating and selecting and much more. And in addition to the content, which I think is tremendous to help you really form a good job search strategy, I really believe that equally important is that weekly light accountability with others that are in the group that are in the same situation, getting some new ideas, some encouragement, some moral support, and get back to that even keel so you can tackle the next week successfully. Throughout the 8 weeks, we also explore what God's perspective is of your job search in your life, which I think really is the bigger question and the more important factor in all of this. He cares about your job search just like he cares about every aspect of your life, and we explore that as well. We have new classes beginning monthly. I believe we have one starting next week, actually. And see the website for details and to sign up. It's free, it's online, so you don't have to drive anywhere. It's tremendously helpful, and I really encourage you to take advantage of it. Tom talked about it, Dave talked about it, I'm talking about it. Just do it. You'll be glad you did. Our LinkedIn group, check it out. If you go to LinkedIn and put MN Crossroads Career Network in the search box, you can join our group. And it's a great way to find current information. People post jobs, people post articles that are helpful. And more importantly, there is well over 2,000 people in the group that all have been through Crossroads and currently are. And it's a great way to look for people that might be working at your target companies. They remain in there after they landed in new positions in order to be a contact for you and be able to be a resource to help you navigate the organizations they're in. So if you're looking for a contact at a particular company, the Crossroads group can be a great place to check that out. So go join the LinkedIn group. As I said, just put MN Crossroads Career Network in the search box. Same thing at YouTube. If you put MN Crossroads Career Network, you're going to find our YouTube channel and all of our webinars. This one will be posted by tomorrow, and all of our previous ones are posted there as well. And so you can review previous ones and get some great help and ideas. We've had tremendous speakers over the past couple of years that we've been doing everything online, and we'll continue to post things going forward. So take advantage of that as often as you like, and refer it to other people as well. You know, what's interesting is our people that have been watching online, the numbers have been shrinking a little bit, but our numbers of views on our YouTube channels have been growing. So the webinars are getting watched, not necessarily live all the time, but you can check out all the previous ones as well. As an additional resource, Thrivent has been just tremendous with us. They have provided resources and help in so many ways for us over many years now. And one of the things they do and are partnering with us is they offer 3 regular monthly webinars on financial considerations during job transition. These are not sales presentations. These are really practical help on how to look at your budget, how to think of your retirement plans, what you can do to keep yourself whole during your job transition. They're really great help for, there's 3 webinars a month that they do on a rotating basis. You can sign up for them on the website as well, and the schedules and everything are there. Really encourage you to take advantage of it, and I'm just grateful for them for all they do for us. I just want to acknowledge that all the things we do are not possible because of a couple of people. It is because of actually over 40 volunteers that we have that are coaches, that are class facilitators, that are prayer support people, all kinds of different things that they do. They bring their time, their effort, their expertise all on a volunteer basis. They all have day jobs. And I'm just grateful that they give of themselves to put on everything we do. And so as you see people, be sure to thank them, because none of this happens without all of them. And then finally, if you don't have a church home, be sure to visit one of the churches that aligns with Crossroads, Woodbury Lutheran, North Heights Church, and Grace Church. We are all meeting in person on Sunday mornings and streaming online, and really encourage you to get plugged in. One of the ways to keep your attitude up and be able to get through this more successfully is to be plugged in with a community of people that care for you and want to help and can support you spiritually and in every other way. Really encourage you to plug in that way. And that's it. If you have any other questions, you can reach us through the website. Feel free to email anytime. But really glad you attended today, and I hope it was worthwhile for you. If you want to join us next week, we have Brian Horvath is going to be talking about LinkedIn. That's next Thursday morning. And I really encourage you to check out the details on the website for that and pre-register as well. Thanks for attending tonight, and hope it was worthwhile. See you again soon.